Well, this was definitely one of the trickiest I've ever been involved with. I went round the houses with this, well, not with this track in particular, because originally I was asked to remix a different track, which was I Don't Really Mind from In a Speaker. I made a remix and I sent it back to Modular Records, and they sent me an email back next day just saying, yep, we love it, it's accepted. And I remember listening back to it shortly after, and what I'd made of I Don't Really Mind was a very jarring acid track, which I felt just wasn't much use to anybody really. It just felt like it was just functional, and it didn't really have enough of Tame Impala in it, I felt, to kind of justify it being Tame Impala. And it it was just, it was just rubbish, I suppose, looking back. And I emailed Modular back and just said, look, I'm really sorry. I wrote a big letter actually, and apologised for the remix and asked them to, to forget it basically, and to pretend that it didn't happen. What I had done between feeling that mix wasn't good enough and getting in contact with Modular was I did actually try a couple of different versions to see if I could get something better. And I made like this high energy version of I Don't Really Mind, and that was just not doing it either for me. So by the time I got back to contacting Modular and apologising for what I'd done, what I'd made, I asked if I could change the song, and I asked if I could remix Why Won't You Make Up Your Mind. Now, I suppose the thing that made me gravitate towards that track was its melancholy sense, which I suppose is something that I'm always attracted to. There's many of the remixes and the better ones that I've done, I feel, have got that slight sense of melancholy, sadness to them. So this also had it, and instantly when I started listening to the parts, I could hear what I wanted to use, and I was feeling inspired. This all began, this version actually, when I was on a flight somewhere, and I never usually program music anywhere other than the studio. But for some reason, I started programming the little drum machine parts that are at the top of the track over the vocal line, just to kind of get it working off it, and to see where it would lead to. When I eventually got back from the gigs I was doing, I opened up the session and started working into the track, and it just all started falling into place really fast. I really loved the original guitar part that was in the track, so I knew I was going to use that. I was going to take out the kind of Northern Soul drum part that you kind of hear. That's actually at the beginning of the track, but runs throughout the original. And knew it was going to go to more of a kind of straight 4/4. But then also knew, like, when you got a really dramatic switch like that between drum parts, that instantly becomes a moment. So all of a sudden there were more things working in its favour on this version, on this mix, than there was on the one I'd done previous to Tame Impala. So by that point I was already really, really glad that I ditched the original, because it wasn't good enough. And I kind of want to be honest with myself. I don't really want to kid myself and put something out there and think that it's great when really it's a load of crap. So I started working into this, and it again, I don't remember much of doing it, because you're just in a process. You got your brain coming up with things and melodies and parts and sounds and textures and tones, and you're just facilitating it and just getting involved and making it. And again, this was one with the Roland SH1 on the bass line, giving that real punching bass line that's on the beat. But at the same time, I also put down a live bass part as well on, I think it was on my friend's jazz bass, but then cut it up so it was really, really tight and really syncopated on the parts. So it would be, as punchy and precise as possible. This was made in 2010, from what I remember, and I think it was the first time I put anything through my Chandler TGI mini mixer, which I just bought off Mike Skinner from the streets. Actually, he was selling one, and I heard it. I heard he was selling one, and I wanted one, and I got in touch. And about 2 days later, bought it off him, and a few days after that, ended up putting it through there. So the actual sound of this mix was a real revelation to me, because it was the first time I'd used some kind of germanium based circuitry to finish a mix. I'm really big fan of how this track sounds. Another one that went through the same process is Metronomy the Bay, and that's why those two tracks, they do kind of sound, they've got a similarity to them, I think, sonically.